Hey everybody, welcome back to Hotcakes and Hot Reads for November 21st. I am Adam Gilbert Cole, and I am the Adult Services Librarian at William Jeanes Memorial Library. You're on our Facebook page, hopefully you know who we are and what we do. So Hotcakes and Hot Reads is a bi-weekly event, or mostly bi-weekly event, where we talk about books and make some pancakes. Thanks, as always, to William Jeanes Library patron John Lewis. Congratulations, John, for the idea for the program. So, it is Thanksgiving week coming up at the library, which means that our hours are shortened, so make sure you check our website, jeaneslibrary.org, for that. And our remaining November programs are on our calendar at jeaneslibrary.org/events. And the December events, hopefully, will be published in the next couple days. So keep an eye out for what's happening at the library. The other night we had a really great talk by Dr. Steve from the UPenn Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. And he talked about King Tut. And he's coming back in December to give us a virtual tour of the Nile. And he is a great speaker, so you should keep your eye out. December 8th, it will be on the calendar. You can register there. Okay, so, we do this every week, but you can check out our library catalog to put holds on the books that I'm talking about today. So you go to jeaneslibrary.org, click on My Account in the top right corner, and you can go there and search for books. Some of the books are only available in hard copy through our library catalog. Some of them are available for download on your smart devices and tablets with the app Libby, Libby. You can download ebooks and audiobooks both through the app, so you can check that out also. You have a library card, it works there too, yay! All right, and if you have any more questions about any of this stuff, the recipe for today, or the books I talked about, or events coming up, or whatever, email me at acole, that's acole, at mclink.org. I forgot I was preheating the oven. Okay, so today we are making pancake packages. I realized as I was getting ready for today's session that this has really just become an outlet for Adam to experiment with ridiculous recipes. Hi, John, Scully, and Sarah! For me to experiment with ridiculous recipes that I have not tried before, so we're going to see how this turns out, because it's my first time making it. It's going to be interesting. So, pancake packages are really just cottage cheese blintzes in this case. We're gonna make a nice thin, sort of like a crepe, but like a pancake flat that I will remove and make more, and then eventually we're going to stuff it with a filling that I have made here from, you can't really see it, but it's a whole bunch of cottage cheese, so like 1.5 pounds of cottage cheese, 2 beaten egg yolks, a tablespoon of sugar, and a tablespoon of melted butter. And I've blended all that. So once we get to the point where I'm folding these things up, I'll show you a little more of the filling. To make the pancakes themselves, it's very, you know what, I'm going to turn this on in the meantime because I'm using my cast iron skillet again, and it's going to take a little while to get it to temperature. So we'll get that going while I talk about the ingredients here. I've got a very simple, I'm going to have to get the salt because I forgot to measure that out. I've got a cup of flour, 4 beaten large eggs, which is what I was doing when I first came on here, and 1 cup of whole milk, and then a teaspoon of salt, which I am going to reach past y'all here and grab my teaspoon of salt. And I'm going to start mixing them together while I talk about the first book, because it shouldn't take too long to mix it together, but flipping through the rest, or flipping the pancakes out of the pan might take a little bit before we get to the folding here. So, book number 1 is called, and you can barely see it because of the Mylar coating on protecting our very beautiful library book, called Uncanny Valley, a Memoir by Anna Wiener. So, I have professed before on this program about how I'm not super duper into memoirs. I usually sort of gravitate towards fiction as my reading. But in this case, I kind of couldn't pass it up because it focuses. You know what? I'm going to grab a different scraper for this because it's about something that I find really fascinating, and that is the current culture of Silicon Valley. There are a lot of books that have been written lately that are about the sort of tremendous things that Silicon Valley has done and the potential it has to do to change the world. And this is one individual's experience in Silicon Valley that it does not play into that narrative. So she was a literary assistant in New York City working at one of the big publishing houses before she went on an interview for a service that billed itself as Netflix for books, right? We've heard so many tales. I think there are at least 7 or 8 of those that I can recall off the top of my head at this point that we've talked about in our culture. Anyway, she goes on an interview with this outfit, gets hired, and so the whole book is her exploration of Silicon Valley, the culture in there, all of the things that are happening. So it's sort of a not quite brutal, but pretty awful still indictment of the culture of Silicon Valley. In fact, her her phrase, and I love this, is that it's an entire culture that had been seduced by ambitious, aggressive, arrogant young men from America's soft suburbs. You know, there's a lot of great stuff going on out there, but there's also some not so great stuff. She ends up having to deal with some really blatant and blithe sexism. You have to sit through meetings where the phrases rocket ship and unicorn are tossed around to mean, you know, startup companies. We can call them startup companies, right? I think her biggest point of critique that I was most interested in, I was supposed to blend that much slower than I just did, everybody. This is going to be interesting. Is that she sort of sees what these men are trying to accomplish. Mixing my milk in. You know, they've got this sort of systems design way of thinking about the world that they're trying to fix things that maybe do need fixing or could make life better for lots and lots of people. And in the end, it ends up just being a sort of war for market share among, you know, rich, powerful companies led by rich, powerful people. And so the narrative of Silicon Valley that we have, or that we've been presented, I think at this point we probably know enough to know that it doesn't quite match up, but this is a nice individual's tale that will sort of either counter the cultural narrative of these, you know, amazing, dominant companies working to better humanity, and give you some insight into that individual's experience. Alright, so I've got this mixed together. Let's get our teaspoon of salt put in and give it a little bit of time to settle. You know what, everybody? I am going to pull out my immersion blender because I got big chunks of flour in here that are not going to break up. And I kind of want it to be as smooth as possible before we pour it into the pan. So this is going to get loud for a second, y'all. Sorry. Anyway, so that is Uncanny Valley, a memoir by Anna Wiener. You can find it at your local library. Come on, baby, plug in. Okay. So, I'm going to do this, and then we'll move on to our next book, everybody. If you don't have an immersion blender at home, they're really handy, because they don't take up nearly as much space as a regular blender. And they do a really lovely job with something like this, where I just need the flour to not be clumpy. Alright. So, sidebar. We took care of that. And dropped batter on the floor. I will save that for my dog. Okay, so book 1 is down. I'm going to throw some butter into my heating cast iron skillet here. Not too much, because we don't want it to mix into the batter. We just sort of want it to be a coating for the batter. Let's see how this turns out here. Alright, so that is book number 1, which I have said like 3 or 4 times now. But book number 2 is a book I have been reading, I think it might be for like 6 months at this point. I keep like having to check it into the library and let it sit for a while and bring it back out. Because it is, it's really lovely, but it's also dense. So this is This Life, Secular Faith and Spiritual Freedom by Martin Hagland. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly because he is Scandinavian. Okay, so this book, I'm going to quote the author again for this book, but the basis for it is that he says, "If I believed that my life would last forever, I could never take my life to be at stake." So this book is a book about love and grief and wealth and socialism and all kinds of things that we are, constantly grappling with as human beings. His main point is sort of an argument. All right, I'm going to start pouring here, everybody, and I know that you might not be able to see that perfectly, but his main point is an argument against eternalism. This sort of something that seeps into our culture, no matter if you are a believer in the afterlife or not. This concept that your life, this inability to conceive of our lives as finite, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. His argument is that religious faith, a belief in an eternity in heaven, sort of poses problems for our spiritual freedom because it sort of already answers the question of what we're supposed to be doing with our life by saying you should be setting yourself up for the afterlife in this life, which is not the way that he wants to live. His argument is for a more secular faith, or a focus on this physical life, this finite extension that we have, and focus on the bounties of our life and the things that we should be doing to, I guess the focus that we should have on building community and, being aware of other people and treating them with the respect and love that they deserve. All of these things are possible, I guess, in a religious life too, but I think his argument is that folks who are, gotta let it go for a little bit longer. Folks who have the religious outlook but are living their lives that way are actually practicing his sort of secular faith, his idea of focus on this world. There is way, way, way more to this book, everybody. You can see that it's really thick, and I will never be able to do it justice. I love this book not only for his arguments, but also that he's a really tender writer, too. He's just someone who, I don't know, somehow manages to make these philosophical arguments, these moral arguments, really relatable and loving. Anyway, that is This Life by Martin Hagland. Book number 2 for today. I think I might have gotten this first one a little thick, everybody. We're going to take a look in a second and see how it turns out, because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to fold it the way I want to be able to fold it. Alright, but it is just about done here. So, we're going to move on in just a second. Why do pancakes smell so good, everybody? Why do they smell so good? Alright, so I'm going to move this over to a cutting board right here and I'm going to do it with the cooked side up. Notice I didn't flip it, because the recipe says don't flip. I'm gonna pour some more. Just sort of swirl it around a little bit in the pan. Gotta get me a... Yeah, this one might turn out a little better here. Gotta get my hot pad. Cast iron skillets are great until you go to grab the handle with your bare hand after it's been cooking for a while. Alright, so book number 3 is The Lady's Handbook for Her Mysterious Illness by Sarah Raimi. Another nonfiction title. Hey, I chose almost nonfiction again this week, everybody. I keep telling you that I appreciate fiction more than nonfiction, but apparently I'm on a kick. Yeah, that went much faster this time. Alright, so, Sarah Raimi, this is her first book. Sarah Raimi, like many women, was experiencing sort of a mysterious illness. And her doctors could not diagnose it. And this is a supremely common problem for women in our culture. Women are misdiagnosed way more than men because for the longest time, and hopefully it's changing, but for the longest time, that sort of 160-pound white man was normal in the medical world. Anyway, so women are something like 50% more likely to be misdiagnosed after a heart attack. And they make up something like 75% of the population with an autoimmune disease, and have an average of 5 years before they are properly diagnosed with their autoimmune disorder. And that's not even counting the sort of sex-based disorders that they face that men don't. Endometriosis is a horrible, painful disorder where the uterine lining grows outside of the uterus. And I have personally known at least 3 women, and there are scores of stories online that you can read about people being misdiagnosed for endometriosis because its symptoms often mimic other disorders. Anyway, Sarah Raimi was also one of these WOMIs, Women with Mysterious Illnesses. This last pancake got a little light, everybody, or a little slight, so maybe more batter this time. She even has an acronym. I don't know if that's an actual acronym they coin in the medical world, but she uses it frequently. And so it's a memoir of her attempts to be diagnosed accurately. And her sort of, in the end, crusade to advocate for herself. And, I should have put more butter in the pan this time. Let's see how this turns out. To advocate for herself in this kind of environment. You know, she faces some really serious biases. She ends up going through surgeries that she wouldn't have had to go through because of these misdiagnoses and all kinds of terrible things. So, a sort of another indictment of a culture that tends to not treat women the way it does men. Anyway, another great read because she's a great writer, too. I have that thing where, like, no matter if a book is about something that I am really keen to read, I need it to also be readable, if that makes sense. Like, it needs to also play with the English language in a way that, like, sort of tweaks at my intellect and, you know, gets to my emotions and that sort of thing. So that is, again, The Lady's Handbook for Her Mysterious Illness by Sarah Raimi. These things look beautiful, and I can't wait to fill them with this cottage cheese mixture. Butter. Butter, you said last time. Add more butter, and you almost didn't. Alright, so we're going to let that melt. I'm going to lick butter off my fingers, because why not? And then I'm going to talk about book number 4. So book number 4 is not a book you should read when you are hungry, because it will just make you hungrier. But it is still tremendously interesting. So this is Feasting Wild, In Search of the Last Untamed Food by Gina Ray Lacerva. She starts the book as sort of a travelogue, right? She's picking some foods that she wants to investigate, and she travels to places to investigate them. And we've probably read that book before, or we've at least seen it on the bookshelves. It's an interesting idea, and certainly there's a lot to be said for that kind of, natural history or exploration of culinary culture. But this book also asks some really big questions about what it means for, what the word wild means. Like, we are, as a human civilization, we have sort of slowly, over time, cut out the wild in our diet for the industrialized and the mass scale. And there's a lot to be said for the ability to feed people that way. And so, this book is an exploration of the, not conflict, conflict's not the word I'm looking for, but the two sides of this equation. And, she's really, like I said, asking questions about what it means to be wild. So, like, why are truffles and wild-caught salmon now sort of luxury items when they used to be the staple, the peasant staple, that sort of thing. She's just like a really great and thoughtful writer, someone who does a lot of, I guess, thinking with her words, which is a ridiculous phrase, and I'm not, my brain is starting to fry already, everybody, like these pancakes, but, when a thinker really does justice to the exploration of a topic slowly and with real insight into the process of how they got to where they are in their thinking. That's her, and that's this book. I would highly recommend it, like I said, but not when you are hungry. All right. I had an early breakfast, so I'm sure you guys can hear. I'm over here, like, smacking my lips because my mouth is watering so much to the smell. Book number 5, before we get to the lightning round, and then I try to fold over my first blintz, is a very slim tome of short stories called Likes by Sarah Shunlian Bynum. I think I probably did this earlier in the spring when, we were all sort of having trouble finding our center in the midst of the first phases of our pandemic. Short stories are a great balm to that, because you don't need the focus, the attention, that you do have to bring to some novels, some nonfiction, some stuff like that. You can just sort of dip your toe in for the evening before you go to bed and put it down and come back again Saturday morning and read another short story. So this is a collection of short stories, a very beautiful exploration of like the arc of women's lives these days. The title story is about a father exploring the Instagram feeds that his young daughter and her friends have set up, these sort of inscrutable things where they have these images on their Instagram feeds, and then they take and interpret the images and what he learns about his child that way. There are stories that take a little bit of fairy tale and turn them on their heads. There are... I'm going to look at my notes again because I wrote this up and now I have to go back. Okay, oh yeah, and one reviewer, I really liked this. One reviewer said that if women are the central characters of the stories of Likes, then time is sort of the villain that stalks them, which is something that most women experience in our culture. That it's often okay for men to get old. They just are seen as, oh, my butter is getting brown. They're just seen as gaining wisdom and life experience and that sort of thing. But because women are valued in a different way, you know what? We're just gonna make a big blitz here, everybody. Scoop out our last little bit. Because women are valued in a different way, time is really the thing that affects them differently from men, and often in a much more negative way, at least according to cultural perceptions. Anyway, so we've got a story about like a whole community waiting for a king to die, and the effect that his memory has on the women of the community. We've got we've got lots of different things here. Sorry. Anyway, that's the young wife's tale, which is sort of subverting the princess trope. We've got a story about the bears, or called the bears, that follows a writer who learns that there are far more frightening things than woodland creatures in the woods. That one is sort of set around a creative residency that happens for the writer. Just these things that women experience that, sour their ideas of the world. That is Likes by Sarah Shunlian Bynum. You can check out other reviews online that do a much better job of selling the book than I have just done right now. But if you're looking for short stories and sort of short stories with a real flair for wordplay, I'm actually going to flip this one because I should not have put that much in the pan. You should check out this collection of short stories. All right, so that's it. I'm going to turn this off. We're going to roll our blintzes, and then we'll talk about what happens after that. All right. While I go through the lightning round, everybody. So let's get these bowls out of the way so we can talk about our books really quickly. I don't know if you can see, but my kitchen's a bit of a mess today. All right. I have collected some books that I'd like to sell you on quickly here in our lightning round for today, while we roll up our blintzes. All right, so the first is If You Leave Me, a novel by Krista Hana Kim. This is a historical drama set in Korea and centered on Korean women around the time of the Korean War. So when, when the communists invaded from the north to the south. So it is character-centered and really a lovely tale of family finding family. All right, so what I'm doing here is taking a rounded tablespoon, scooping it into the center of the blintz. I don't know if you can see that. And then we fold it over, make a little package, turn it, and put it back on the board. At this point, I have my options. I can either put it in a pan or on a baking sheet and bake it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rebutter my cast iron skillet and fry it on either side after I get these all rolled. So that's If You Leave Me, a novel by Krista Hana Kim. Here is The Punishment She Deserves by Elizabeth George. A thick sort of inspector mystery novel set in England. A local deacon is accused of a very serious crime, and then while in custody, dies, and it looks like suicide. Our inspector is sent to investigate the death, and despite the fact that it almost certainly was a suicide, yeah, this one's folding much better because it's thinner. So, Blintz rule number 1, thin pancakes. All right, anyway, so, a thick novel following lots of twists and turns. If you like mysteries, this is a great one, especially if you like the English countryside. Here is The Queen of the Tierling by Erica Johansson. Johansson? I'm going to bet it's Johansson because she's American. A woman-centered fantasy epic about a princess who must ascend to the throne and fight off a sorceress. It sounds sort of cliche, but it is not. Besides the fact that there's some, really thrilling fantasy action and stuff like that, it has a really lovely take on the story itself. So give it a try if you're a fan of fantasy epics and want stories that are centered around women. We've got Stakes is High by Michael Denzel Smith. A short but incisive look at the American dream. The subtitle of the book is Life After the American Dream. We all been going through some stuff lately, and especially for the Black and African American community. The idea of the American dream has never really been true, but now we have some evidence. And so what do we do with that evidence? What do we do with our culture in the face of that? Etc., etc., etc. Like I said, the book is short, but it is really powerful and well written, and something that I feel like a lot of different people in my life should read. All right, so that is Stakes is High by Michael Denzel Smith. Oh, my little pancake on this one got very tiny and does not want to fold over. All right, make room for myself here. Oh, guys, I had to talk about one of my favorites because I brought it home in case I could read it with my boys. I'm not sure they're ready for it yet, but we'll see. The Never-Ending Story. You've probably seen the movie. The movie does a well enough job of doing the book justice, but the book itself is a masterpiece in kids' fantasy literature. I have read it, I don't know, probably 3 times in my life, and I am very excited to read it another time. It just gets me in a way that a lot of adult books don't. I don't know what that says about me, but I really love it. So take it as a wholehearted recommendation from Adam to you to finally read The Never-Ending Story if you never have. I may end up mixing more batter here to make the rest of these up for my family, everybody. We have The Moor's Account by Laila Lalami. Another sort of historical fiction, although this one is a really inventive historical fiction. It is the purported diaries of the first, person of color, not Native American, but first black-skinned person in America, the slave who was brought over with... That one fell apart. We're going to have to work on that one, everybody. Who was brought over as one of the first expeditions. And so it's an interesting tale of the culture of that time and how, colonialism, that sort of thing. It's a great book. Check it out. And then to finish off our day... Floret Farms, A Year in Flowers, designing gorgeous arrangements for every season. I've been pulling this off the nonfiction new shelf every couple of days just to flip it open and look at it because it is gorgeous on the inside. I mean, I think it has to be if you're like a flower arranging book, but it is like all encompassing. We've got like pages on structural foliage. They're, telling you to use like blueberry and raspberry cuttings and stuff like that to fit into your arrangements. Gosh, it's beautiful on the inside, everybody. You gotta check this book out. Again, A Year in Flowers. Floret Farms, A Year in Flowers. All right, so I'm gonna finish off with the sound of frying blintzes in my pan. I wish I had opened this butter up better. With lots of butter this time, because I'm supposed to get this really golden brown on the outside now. Or these guys are really golden brown on the outside. So first thing I'm going to do is put one in with the folded side down to try to get it to seal a little bit. Who knows if that's going to happen. Serving suggestions for these are either just a little bit of sugar sprinkled on top, or if you have sour cream and jam, that would be lovely. You can do something like a honey to give it a little, like the sweetness, but, honey's like a different taste than sugar, obviously, Adam. And let me turn this up so we can all see each other as we say goodbye. I have to turn my... I have to turn my stovetop back on to get my blintzes to fry. Okay. That is this week's, or this bi-weekly edition of Hot Cakes and Hot Reads. Thanks again, John. Congratulations again, John and Sarah. This week is Thanksgiving, so everybody please stay safe. Celebrate in a way that is healthy, and I will see you again in 2 weeks. Much love. Be well.